Hey, my name is Marie Pudlas, and my project is called The Hive. And it's about turning a parking lot into a community hive of activity. So I'm located in Vancouver in the Southlands neighborhood, specifically the northwest corner of West 41st Avenue and Dunbar Street. It's across from a bus loop, and it's actually in a bit of a bus hub. There's quite a few bus stops in this intersection, and most people waiting for buses here going along West 41st Avenue are going to or from UBC. It's also a densifying area of the Southlands neighborhood. You can see quite a few large blocks in this part, and those are low-rise residential / commercial housing. So here I've highlighted in sort of this cloud smoke the sound and air pollution from the vehicle traffic in this area. And you can see that the site, the Hive, is next to a 2-story building. Now this building is currently just an empty real estate building, especially with COVID. They're not really showing the mock-up rooms in there. It used to be a Scotiabank. So this parking lot used to be used, but now is just sitting empty all day long. It's not a very interesting place to wait for a bus, and it just has a gentle slope, 5% going across. The future, I don't know if it's how soon in the future it's going to be built, but there's very likely going to be a mixed commercial building in the site. So in addition to the area being densified, it's also the neighborhood with the highest number of children in Vancouver. However, you can see that their physical well-being, their social competence, and their emotional maturity is worsening. Now, exactly why that is, I wasn't able to find any one study that said specifically why, but we do know that thoughtfully designed outdoor green spaces and woodlands help with issues like ADHD, anxiety, and depression. So with denser housing, worsening children's well-being, and no vibrant public gardens within this area, I asked, how can a garden restore and activate the minds and bodies of families who live in the Southlands neighborhood? So looking at the 7 C's, it's a research paper by Susan Harrington and a few other researchers where they looked at challenge in gardens, especially with children of different ages and sizes, gardens with character, and change with seasons. So you can see the grasses, they grow kind of with the children, and then they get lopped down, and it's this big dramatic change in the garden, and it fascinates the children. And of course, having areas where children can build and play and get messy. So with that in mind, I wanted to play off of the character with a hive. So I started playing around with hexagons. And hexagons of different sizes. So on the left, I experimented with overlaying different sized hexagons, and I found that the base diameter of 3 meters of the hexagons worked best for carving out spaces and having areas where the pathways were not too wide and not too narrow. And that eventually led me to this plan. So it's a multi-roomed garden, and along the north edge, along the wall of the building, is more family-oriented spaces. So there's spaces for them to build, spaces for them to climb and draw along the wall, places with sand, places for smaller children to hide, and smaller children like smaller spaces, kind of like a nest, and spaces for kids and caregivers to climb and explore areas. There's a treats cart sort of in the center that could be there seasonally with things like ice cream in the summertime or hot chocolate and coffee in the winter, as well as spaces for small groups and solo visitors who might want to read or just hang out in small groups, have a cup of coffee with a couple of friends, of course, post-COVID, and a nice covered bus stop next to the washrooms so that people don't have a depressing area to wait for the bus. There's a sense of mystery with the paths as you round the corners, and vegetation I'll show you in a bit, as well as the partitions that block sight lines so that you don't necessarily notice the noise as much, out of sight, out of mind kind of idea. So cutting along the section along the family sections, you have a grove of trees on the left with silvicelles underneath so that the trees have lots of space for their roots to grow while the kids play and build things around the canopy, underneath the canopy of the trees. And tall grasses and shrubs for fine texture And on the far right, you have a climbing structure for the children. And on either side, you can see partitions that block out views of the alleyway and the large traffic. So here's some precedents of what I was kind of going for. On the left, you can see sort of a scrim partition. On the upper right, this is an extreme example of a transparent partition. So not proposing a 12-meter glass wall, but something much shorter than that. And then having crunchy gravel pathways, so you have that sound and that texture with a rigid edge so that the hexagon forms don't lose their shape. Fall and winter interest and nice wooden benches for sort of that natural warmth, so it's comfortable to sit on. And then for the children, of course, getting climb, getting dirty, you can build stuff, really getting messy in the garden. Now with the plants, I really wanted to engage the senses. Of course, we've been talking about this all day. Engaging the sight with complementary and analogous colors, some kind of goofy plants like the red hot poker. So for kids, that could be kind of like Dr. Seuss-ish, super tall plants compared to how tall they are. A touch with lamb's ears, super soft, and grasses that are, kids love to play with grasses. It's just kind of like a giant feather. The smell, so there's aromatic shrubs with the lavender and the rosemary. Of course, a lot of these attract insects, so you get the sound of the insects, you get the sway of the grasses in the breeze, and then taste, there's a few tasty shrubs that they can munch on in the fall. And of course, play, some of these plants would really be conducive to making little nests and building things. So here's a model that I made with showing from the corner aspect, from the intersection. So you can see some of the clear partitions that I was mentioning earlier. So they allow sight lines through, but they kind of block the sound. And we have the Hive sign welcoming people in, allowing them to know that it's a public space and not just a private space blocked off from the public. I'm going to walk you through, starting over from the far right children's side, over towards the climbing wall, in through sort of the grove or bosque of trees, through the reading room, and then over to the bus stop. So as you enter the garden, you really have that sense of mystery. You don't know exactly what's going around the corner, and then you see this play structure, kids can climb over it. There's spaces, of course, for children to hide, children to climb and draw along the wall, and then children and parents and caregivers alike can build stuff underneath the trees. And then with the reading room, I really wanted to make it more enclosed, so you don't need those sight lines to supervise children as much, because you're alone, you just want to kind of hang out and read a book. So you have taller shrubs, taller partitions. And then the bus stop, you have clear sight lines so you can see your bus and not miss it. So thank you. I'm excited to hear your feedback.